Straight talk, no holds barred.
That's what Hamas did, and Hamas say they didn't do it, but Hamas lied.
You contradict what America's report, you contradict Israel's report.
The Liberation Organization died. The children, they will rise up tomorrow and fight for liberty.
Biggest conversations from around the world. Borderlines with Ireti Bakare-Yusuf. Fridays at 4 p.m. Let's talk. On Borderlines, we go beyond boundaries.
You know, let's be honest here. This is an organization that sent nearly 3,000 terrorists into Israel, and on the most part, they were proud. They don't care if they die. All they care about is killing Israelis and killing Jews.
Why is it that the Palestinians cannot go by dialoguing with these people through other international bodies?
Straight talk, no holds barred.
That's what Hamas did, and Hamas say they didn't do it, but Hamas lied.
You contradict what America's report, contradict Israel's report.
The Liberation Organization died. The children, they will rise up tomorrow and fight for liberty.
Biggest conversations from around the world. Borderlines with Ireti Bakare-Yusuf. Fridays at 4 p.m. Let's talk.
Welcome back to Borderlines. Welcome back. Yes, it's me. It's still Good Friday. But we're in Borderlines. Now we're crossing borders. I said we are crossing borders because that's what we do on Borderlines. And I have with me one of my favorite guests today. So today we're going from the Middle East. That's where we're going. We're going from Nigeria to the Middle East. And then we make it back to Africa and about 5:05 or something like that. But right now, yes, we're a little bit late for our flight. Technical issues, but all resolved now. My guest today, you've heard him. He's been here before. And he pulls no punches. Yes. His name is Charles Onunaiju. Charles, Director of Center for Chinese Studies. He's a PhD, but he's one of those rare PhDs. Let me tell you about Charles. He doesn't want you to call him a doctor. And that tells you, that is what happens. You see? PhDs who are PhDs, who are worth their PhDs, no, they don't want you to call them a doctor because the PhD comes after their name. Because it is an academic qualification. Not those people that buy all those, honorary PhDs and suddenly start calling themselves Dr. Lagbaja, Dr. somebody, Dr. No Doctor. Charles, welcome. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, we seem to be having problem with Charles. I can see him, but I can't hear him. Yes. Charles, you're there. Welcome, or welcome back, shall I say? Uh-oh. I still can't hear you. Can you hear me? I still can't hear you. Can you hear me? This is oh gosh, today is a Good Friday of technical issues.
Get him to stop calling.
Hello, Charles.
Yes.
We're live.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm back online. Please.
Okay, excellent. Welcome.
Thank you.
Don't worry, we're good. Thank you for accepting the invitation. I already made
Thank you for having me on your iconic platform. Thank you. Your platform has become the most iconic and esteemed platform for engaging on critical international issues.
Thank you.
And you kept it strong and relevant at all times. We can't thank you enough.
Well, let me just say, there's a huge team, quite a big team behind, that makes in the back office, as we say, that makes this happen. So, and they can all hear you. So thank you. Thanks, Charles, for that. I'll accept.
My warm regards, your great team.
Yes, and I will accept. We do the best international show on radio in Nigeria, even on TV. Let's be frank. So let's get down to it. The last time we had you here, okay, Israel, so the majority of the West was still on the side of Israel. okay? They were still pretty much saying Israel had a right to defend itself. Israel had a right to this. Israel has a right to that. A large majority of them were still denying the context of October 7th last year. However, this last week, there's been a huge shift. In fact, since you've been here, as you know, like different Western countries have continued to pull away from Israel to distance themselves from Israel. As a result of Israel has since killed over 30,000 Palestinians, Gazans. They've arrested several hundreds in the West Bank. They continue to kill arbitrarily. There's the big issue. Now they've escalated to weaponizing food. So they're blocking humanitarian aid. And it just goes on. And Netanyahu says he's still insisting that he wants to go into Rafah. I want to ask you, let's start from that UN resolution. The most groundbreaking thing happened. Suddenly, we had a UN resolution where 14 of the Security Council voted in favor of a ceasefire, and one, America, who would normally veto, abstained. What are your thoughts on that? Charles, can you hear me?
Thank you. Thank you.
Now you're upside down. I don't know what you're doing with your laptop.
Yes.
Go on.
Yes. I get the question. I want to respond immediately. First and foremost, it is really tragic, and it speaks considerably to the paralysis of international system that the Palestinians have been under siege in the past 5 months. We have seen a UN resolution passed last Monday after failed 5 resolutions to bring ceasefire, to compel Israel to observe a ceasefire in this conflict. 5 failed resolutions. And even the one that was passed with United States abstaining is also limping. You know, immediately the United States abstained, it claimed that it is not binding. Contrary to Article 25 of United Nations Security Council Charter, that United Nations Security Council resolution are binding, United States claimed that it is not binding. Madam Greenfield, the UN ambassador to the US ambassador to the UN, quickly said after she abstained from voting that the resolution is not binding. Even the Department of State spokesman, Mr. Matthew Miller, also followed and said that the United Nations Security Council demanding ceasefire is not binding. Furthermore, the Defense Department spokesperson said that it did not alter the policy of United States to continuously arm Israel. So the truth of the matter is, yes, this resolution has been passed, but has no effect. Even the Chinese ambassador, Mr. Jiang Zun, said that the tradition is that United Nations Security Council are binding, but we could see very clearly the lack of will by the West, despite their pretenses. You spoke about the pretentious gulf existing between Israel and what is the gulf? They continue to supply lethal weapons to Israel, with which women, children, elderly, hospitals, mosques, schools are bombed and destroyed. What is the gulf? What is the gulf? The world shouldn't be deceived by these pretentious differences between Netanyahu and... So, you see, the question is, Israel had to be stopped. And it's very clear that Israel cannot be persuaded to stop. Israel can only be forced to stop. And the responsibility to protect, which is an act adopted by United Nations, by heads of government, as far back as the 90s, says states should act to protect citizens who are under carnage, who are under the threat of ethnic cleansing, the threat of humanitarian disaster. What else could amount to the threat of not even a threat, what else could amount to genocide? We saw it in the early 90s during the humanitarian crisis in the Balkans and Rwanda. The idea to develop the state responsibility to, and if a state is not willing to defend her citizens or lacks the resources to defend her citizens, it is obliged on other member states of the international community to act in concert to defend. I think the world has stood akimbo for too long. Discussing United Nations resolution, you can imagine, after 5 attempts to find a resolution to call for a ceasefire, one eventually came, but it was too weak and too meek. In fact, it was supposed to last for a period of time. And from the time the resolution was passed on Monday up to now, Israel has murdered not less than 1,000 Palestinians, including women and children. So the question is, where is the effect? Where is the effect of this resolution? United States that pretended to abstain was very clear that this resolution had no effect of law. And even if it had, it is not bound by it. So the question is, how could the world respond to the most criminal devastation of a people? How could the world respond to this? And I sincerely believe, like I've always said, that states should take responsibility, especially the states in the immediate neighborhood. The Arab League, they should seize the initiative. They could give life to this resolution that was just passed by creating a force to force Israel to stop. Israel cannot be persuaded by any law to stop. It's on trial in the International Court in The Hague, and it has not been persuaded.
So let me interrupt you. Going back to what you said, and it's a very interesting point that you raise. It's a point that a lot of my listeners, they raise. You said the Arab community, the Arab countries, it is up to them to come together now and force that Israel to abide by that resolution. What is it that they should be doing that they haven't done?
Okay. First and foremost, let me be very clear. The Israel disregard for United Nations resolution is not new. Like, in 2006, there was also a United Nations Security Council resolution voted by 14 members, only absented by United States, declaring Israel's settlement in Palestine illegal. And of course, while this resolution was being passed, with Obama administration on its exit, Israel was busy constructing new settlement in the Palestinian land. So Israel contempt for international law, Israel contempt for United Nations is legendary. And anybody expecting anything different is simply naive, in my view. It's simply naive. It is simply, in my view, from the very time Israel decided to open a battle against a people who has no army, who had no air force, who had no navy. From the very day Israel declared a war, claiming it wanted to eradicate Hamas, I was expecting the Arab states' defense minister to convene and begin to think of an intervention force to stop Israel, because it was obvious this were going to be the result. Israel was going to ignore every appeal, protected by United States, protected by the West, whose logic of hegemony is to ignore the law. The logic of Western hegemony, the logic of Western imperialism is to ignore any law that does not promote their agenda. And that is what we have seen all through history. And there was not going to be any...
Oh, why does this network have to do this? Just when... Oh, Charles, your line has frozen. Oops. Oh, the line has frozen. Should we go on a quick 2 minutes break and let's see whether the line will be back? Lagos, Nigeria, you can call.
Anybody expecting anything?
Oh, he's back. Okay, you're back.
Yeah, so sorry, that was an interruption, please. I'm sorry.
Okay,
the point I'm trying to make is, let's be very clear about this. We had expected the Arab League, the 22-member nation Arab League, to have developed a standby force to find an international instrument, including the responsibility to protect, which had become a mechanism for arresting an ugly situation that is as bad as ethnic cleansing, genocide against the people. We were expecting the 22 Arab League nations to develop to develop a regional force to weigh in to stop this carnage. That is the only way Israel would have been restrained. And beyond that, a lot of Arab countries have leverages, even against United States. If they refuse to buy arms from the United States, their arms industry could collapse.
But let's
Where
talk
is the
about
Saudi
that.
Arabia?
Yeah, but
Where is the Saudi Arabia?
okay.
Where is Jordan? Where is Egypt? They make billions of purchases of arms from United States. They keep the U.S. military-industrial complex busy. If they only threatened to stop buying from the Americans, that would have knocked some head in the Washington. That would have knocked some head in the White House. That would have knocked some head in the Congress. Making appeals, exposing Israeli crime is too routine and ineffectual. It's been long. It's been long in history. Exposing Israeli crime does not shame them anymore. They don't get ashamed anymore. So why worry about, the crime Israel commits every night? The Al Jazeera television owned by the Qatari family shows this. Nobody cares. The world do not care. Israel does not care. So you need to stop them. And the Arab countries have sufficient instrument to leverage their position. They could boycott United States armed sales. If they do that, military-industrial complexes in United States will be losing tremendous value. Even a trade to look east or to look Russian will be enough to knock heads in White House and Washington. Where is this power by Arab leaders? Saudi Arabia, Jordan, you're dropping food, you supply weapon with one aircraft, and you supply food with the other aircraft. You ensnare people to come and pick the food, and you shoot them, you kill them. This is what is happening, and people are sitting in United Nations, passing endless resolution, discussing, and lives are being lost. And Israel is demonstrating the kind of impunity that have not been seen in history of international system. And what is the grand food? They said they want to eradicate Hamas. How many Hamas militants have they killed? Israel is in a blind fury. It's been killing women and children. Key commanders of Hamas are still active in the field.
Absolutely.
Mohammed there, the leader of the Al-Qassam Brigade, the Mercurial Mohammed there, is still active in Gaza, directing operations against Israeli forces. Yahya Sinawar, the leader of Hamas, the most wanted, is still active in Gaza. Israel is as weak, cowardly, and weak as anything can be, because I do not see an army that pulls people from hospital bed and execute them, claiming to be a strong one. I've not seen an army that bombs mosques and bomb churches and bomb markets and claim to be strong. How many Hamas has Israel killed?
How many Hamas has Israel killed, Charles? Excellent.
By United States.
Yeah, you ask a very good question. How many Hamas has Israel killed? I'd like us to go back to the Arab League. Saudi Arabia, who is effectively, if you like, the big brother, right? The Nigeria of the Arab nation, right? Saudi Arabia was normalizing relations with Israel before 710, okay? Saudi Arabia, incidentally, also happens to be the most muted. I understand what you're saying, that, the Arab League as a group have been very weak, but Qatar has been much more vocal. Egypt has been lukewarm, but Saudi Arabia seems to be, if you like, the weakest link with regards to condemnation, voluminous condemnation. Why do you think that is? Is it because they need America to buy from them? Is it an economic reason? Or is there more to it?
Well, like you said, the Arab states, Saudi Arabia principally has been missing in action. It was on the road of normalizing relations with Israel when the October 7 happened, and it recoiled. And interestingly, it is a non-Arab power that has been in the forefront of supporting the resistance, Iran, and of course, never forget the never die Houthis who are still disrupting, who are still sowing chaos in the Red Sea, and of course, Hezbollah, of course, resisting, and once resisting Israeli aggression. Apart from these three groups, you know, they are virtually the whole Arab world pretends as if, I understand there is a lot of anger in the Arab streets. Arab streets are full of fury at the weakness and the imbecility of their regimes, at the weakness of their government. There is sufficient anger on Arab street about the weakness of not even Africa. I can understand when at the peak of the South African apartheid regime, African government did not just simply lament. You know, there were important moves. Countries like Nigeria took up the role of frontline state, deployed forces in Angola to stop apartheid regime in their track. And there's nothing short of that we expect from Israel, from the Arab countries. Not only could they leverage their, to a certain degree, U.S. economic dependence on this region, you know, especially armed cells, you know, and others, to compel or knock heads in Washington and the White House and U.S. important institutions like the Congress. We do not see this happening. For Saudi Arabia, their silence is demeaning. Of course, there is a price to pay in the long run for a country that wants to modernize in desperation to modernize and to be a leader of the Arab world, to be found wanting or with no voice at this critical moment. History will revisit the Al Saud family for their complicity in the murder of their kith and kin in Palestine. Because for doing nothing, they are absolutely complicit. And even for other countries, Egypt, we've seen Qatar in the forefront of mediation, trying to broker a ceasefire. But they themselves should not be, they shouldn't be naive about the entity they're dealing with. You know, they shouldn't be naive about the entity they're dealing with, you know. Appeasing Israel, appealing to Israel, and getting Israel to talk, they should have known the outcome from the very time. Indeed. Israel has set out on a clear agenda to decimate Gaza, destroy any prospect of Palestinian statehood, even though their actions is going to be counterproductive in the long run. Because for every Gaza now, it is important to know that for every surviving Gaza is not only a Hamas, but an angry one, willing to take revenge. So I can predict, except this conflict ends in a Palestinian state, there will be many, many October 7. It will be regrettable that innocent people, whether Jews or Palestine, might be caught up in the future from the outcome of this conflict. I can tell you very clearly that except this conflict ends with a two-state solution in which the Palestinians have a state of their own that can be held accountable, that can be held responsible, that can rein in factions of angry Palestinians, the next generation Palestinians, except you have a state that can rein in their anger, rein in their frustration, rein in their thirst for revenge. There will be many more October 7s ahead. I can predict that with so much confidence.
Thank you. Wow, that's very scary. Yeah. I mean, look, it's very jarring. Now, let's talk about, I'd like us to talk about the ICJ. Okay, people are trying to, 0700 993 993 993. But it is best you send a WhatsApp whilst I'm conversing with Charles to 0809 597 5805. What will happen is I will try to ask him your questions from WhatsApp. I won't be coming to your calls till a bit later. Let's talk about the ICJ. The ICJ is said, and it is, without a doubt, the strongest court in the world, right? The same ICJ that has ruled that Israel is committing plausible, and that's a quote, plausible genocide. Has just now recently given order yesterday or the day before, saying ordering Israel to allow humanitarian aid into Gaza. Israel rarely listens to anybody. Israel hasn't listened to the plausible genocide position of the ICJ. Do you believe Israel will now open the gate, the border, to allow humanitarian aid into Gaza?
Well, I think, like I said, I do not see Israel budging. It has set out its strategic goals of decimating Palestine. Mr. Netanyahu, who is under a heavy political pressure because obviously the end of this war will mean the end of his career. And no matter how it ends, it will definitely mean the end of his career. And he is desperate to prolong his stay in power. He has a lot of domestic legal issues. Some could send him straight to jail from the Prime Minister's office. And I think...
I have a question.
Why have we got... Hold on. I haven't picked up... Why? Hold on. I think we have an interruption on our line.
Shut up.
Hello?
Yeah.
Can I please lick your feet?
Right. Charles, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yeah,
Okay.
so I think Israel has proven over and over, like I told you, the long history of their contempt for international law. And of course, what the ICJ, the iconic decision asking for access to humanitarian aid to Palestinians. And Israel, like you have mentioned at the introduction of this show, that Israel has already weaponized food, weaponized hunger as instrument of war. So it is most likely they will ignore this. They will ignore already. They organized some hard nuts, extreme right-wing Israelis to block access to food trucks going into Gaza. We will see more of this posturing. And like I said, except an international force is deployed, the only meaningful way to secure Gaza, the only meaningful way to give Gaza a real relief from the pressure of Israel, either through the weaponization of food or direct bombing and killing of Palestinians, is to establish an international force. And the Arab states should lead the charge in establishing an international force to decisively, just like NATO weighed in the Balkans at the heat of the war in Kosovo. The Arab League should lead the way in establishing an international force to stop the massacre, the killing of Palestinians. It is only by that way we can assert the several international legal instruments that provide for ceasefire, that provide for entry of humanitarian assistance to the Gaza, to stop the genocide, to stop the famine, to stop the hunger. It is only by establishing an international force that can be realized. Okay. The ICJ had made pronouncement right from the time the South African went to court. Israel was very clear that it will not pay heed to this. And Israel does this without consequences. And if it has continued this without consequences, what do you think? The only thing that persuades even individuals to change their behavior is consequences. Even individuals, even for a kid you have in the house. The only way you can get a kid to change his behavior is if there is consequence for non-compliance, if there is consequence for being unruly, if there is consequence for impunity. As far as there is no consequence, Israel will continue to be bolstered by its own ego and its own ego to continue the way it does. So I do not think that any legal instrument, whether by United Nations or by the ICJ, could compel Israel to act otherwise, except especially in stopping her current carnage in Gaza, her current carnage targeting Palestinian women and children. So I think the most decisive instrument to engage Israel in its current war of genocide in Gaza is to create an international force, intervention force, to decisively, to actively wedge in between Israel and the rest of the suffering living Palestinians so that we can save what is left of that ethnic nationality, that racial nationality that is under the threat of total extinction.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Right. I want to talk about the US elections. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think that's why Biden is, oh, hold on. I have a call coming in, Charles. You know what you do? You always trigger people. Hold on. Hello.
Hello?
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
What's your name? Turn off your radio, please. Yes, turn off your radio. Yes, you can.
Hello?
I can hear you.
Hello?
I can hear you.
Hello?
I can hear you. Oh dear. Sorry, the line's cut off. You'll have to call back. Right. Let's talk about the US elections. Suddenly Biden is changing. In fact, not just changing, Anthony Blinken, his body language. Okay. And of course, like I said earlier, other Western countries, their body language, their rhetorics, everything is now moving away from Israel. How much impact do you think Biden's stance with Israel is going to have on his re-election?
Well, I think Mr. Biden has a lot more issues in the United States than the Palestinian question, because even his closest challenger is also as hawkish. Mr. Trump is as hawkish as Biden in respect of Israel. And there are so many things happening. And whatever the shift they pretend to make, speaking about compelling Israel not to invade Rafah. What is the difference between invading Rafah and dropping bomb over Rafah, which has been going on in the past 1 week? What is it?
What is it?
Are they dropping eggs in Rafah? How many people have been killed in Rafah on a daily basis? So you see, these are very criminal technicalities by the Western elites. They show both face. Of course, the pressure is mounting. The humanitarian.
Charles, let me interrupt you a second. 1 second. That call is back because we seem to have some problems with the network. Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Yes. What's your name and where you calling from, please? I can hear you. Yeah, go ahead, Pastor Badamosi. Go ahead. Hello. Okay. I have a message on WhatsApp. My question for your guest is, does he believe that any Arab army will be able to face the Israeli army in any confrontation? That's from Chooks in Ikorodu.
Let me tell you, Israel's army had demonstrated intense weakness and cowardice. I do not see any professionalism. From the day of 7th October, the myths about the invisibility of the IDF, the myth about the invisibility of Shin Bet, the myth about the invisibility of Mossad all crumble. And that is the fury that is driving the Israeli security establishment. They could not understand how a myth they have carefully woven over the years was blown up in just a second. That is why they are in.
Oops. Network. Charles's line has gone. Yeah, go on. Okay. So you have to send your questions because as you can see, there seems to be everything going on technically today. Send your comments, your questions to 0809 597 5805. 0809 597 5805. I will try and pick up your call if you call us on 0700 993 993 993. But safer for you to send WhatsApp because as you can see, there are technical issues today. Charles, go ahead. You were saying.
Yes, so like I was saying, the myth of the invisibility of the Israeli army has actually crumbled. And that is actually what informed their fury, their war of fury, because this is a blind fury that is directed at anything that lives. including animals, including babies, including women, including children. This is not a war in any real sense. This is a journey in a blind fury in which everything that lives along your path is wasted away. That is not the behavior of a professional army. That is not the behavior of a conscientious national army. That is not the behavior of a cultured army, an army that pulls people out of their bed, out of their sick bed and shoot them, that walks into a hospital, pull people. Even if he's a Hamas militant, get him well and confront him in the battlefield. Then you will be a respectable army. The IDF acted more as a thug. In fact, they have shown more vulnerability. They have shown more cowardice than they were overrated. Because no army could behave the way the IDF had been behaving. You walk into shops, you walk into hospital, you execute people on hospital bed, you execute people in maternity homes, you execute people walking in the street. That's not the behavior of any national army. That is what it's named. That's the behavior of thugs. That is in fact, even Hamas has shown more. Hamas has even shown greater this thing than IDF. So anybody thinking that Israeli army is invisible, anybody thinking that Israeli army cannot be stopped, is living in the ode of their myth, which actually was blown up on the 7th of October.
Thank you.
Israel can be stopped, obviously. Remember, Hezbollah expelled Israel in 2007 from the Sheba field in southern Lebanon.
Yeah.
In the 35-year war in 2005, Hezbollah expelled Israel from southern Lebanon, which it had sat on for 12 years. That was the first time the myth of Israeli army invisibility was blown. So anybody thinking that Israeli army cannot be stopped, it is just a lack of political will by Arab regimes who are in cahoots with United States and the West to see off their kith and kin in the most heinous and gruesome way. There's no way they could not weigh in and stop Israel from this pogrom, this program of pogrom, of completely annihilating a people. So to be direct to our listener, the question is, Israeli army can be stopped. It has been stopped in the past and can still be stopped now.
Excellent. Right. I have another question. What is the origin of this mysterious alliance between the USA and Israel? Why are the Arab countries mute? Okay, we've done that. So it's the first part of the question is what is relevant? What is the origin of this mysterious alliance? Well, it's not mysterious, but the alliance between USA and Israel. I'm not going to try to answer that because, well, yes, I know, but I'm going to leave you to answer it. That's why you're here.
Well, yes. It's a long one, if you remember.
No, but you have to shorten it. You have to shorten it. I'm going to give you 3 minutes. The questions are coming in.
Yeah, the simple truth is that the most Arabs, most Jews migrated from United States and settled in Israel. Those who were there, the Jews all over the world until the state of Israel was founded and promoted by United States, the United Kingdom, and focused mostly on the Zionist project of Conference of 1897. With Theodor Herzl, the founder of modern Jewish state, been encouraged all along from Jews across the world and mostly from United States. And the Jews became prominent scientists, prominent financiers, became very influential. You could see what happened to presidents of universities recently in United States, simply because their positions on Israel was a little bit ambivalent. A lot of them were hunted out of office, including the first black woman to head a very important university in the United States, because Jewish financiers simply threatened to withhold their funds. And then the university could not, they could not withstand the pressure of Jewish financiers who are willing to withdraw. So this is a long-standing tradition of a Jewish lobby that is very powerful and preponderant in the United States. But that is not to say there are no liberal Jews with strong voices saying, look, you are not doing this in my name. We've seen a lot of these groups coming up in the United States and coming up in Europe and warning that this cannot continue in my name. Some of them have become very outspoken. They're out there in the street. They may not be as influential as their financiers, as their counterparts who are big financiers and big businesses. But their voices are also, yes, their voices are also rising very fast that this crime cannot be committed in the name of the Jews. They are distancing themselves from this crime of the Zionist regime in Israel. So, yes, a long-standing corporate relation, not only in United States, but across Europe. Across Europe, we know of the Jews who helped Israel, who helped the UK develop atomic bomb, the nuclear weapon. And when asked what he wanted, he suggested he wanted a home for the Jews, and that was what gave rise to the Balfour Declaration, which was the origin of the crisis in Palestine, which replaced the original Palestinian owners of the land with immigrant Jews. So there is a long history of Jewish immigrants in Europe becoming influential, in the United States becoming influential. But that notwithstanding, the Palestinian question has become a human cause. It has become a question that borders on common humanity, including the Jews. And quite a number of Jews have distinguished themselves in the advocacy for our decent humanity, which includes respect for life of Palestinians. And it is very, very possible for Palestine and Israel to coexist. Israel with its economic prowess, could become a regional power within the Middle East. As an economic power, it could dominate the market. There is better opportunity for Israel not to live as a state under siege, but a major economic power. It could be a leader in the market. There is immense possibility for a Jewish state cohabiting in peace and amity with her Arab neighbors, including the Palestinian state. That is open. Just that a narrow, ideologically driven, ideologically blinded clique that are almost behind time. The Netanyahu, Mr. Gallant, this clique of extreme Zionists who could not see the opportunity of Israel beyond the ideological delusion of being a hegemon within the region. As beyond that, Israel has tremendous prospects to be a major power, a major trading power. Today, China is not known for its bellicosity. It is known for its economic prowess. The same Israel could be known tomorrow for its economic prowess. It has all potentials in agriculture, in commerce. So if it could build a neighborhood of friendship, if it could build a neighborhood of amity, respect, mutual, it could be a major force in the region. Beyond what it is today, an ideologically intoxicated, suicidal entity that has no future for her people. That is what Mr. Netanyahu and Gallant and their clique are constructing. They can change the narrative if they have the will. I do hope the Israeli working people could step forward to give a new interpretation to the prospect of Israel.
Thank you so much, Charles. Thank you. I did want to, I'm going to touch on Africa a little bit with you because my next guest, I have two guests coming. We're going to be talking about Senegal. What are your thoughts on Senegal? The new Senegal president, the new dawn, as they say, the new dawn in Senegal.
Yes, Ireti, I must tell you that I am extremely, if you accompany your excitement or your enthusiasm with history, you will be as cautious as I've been, because we've seen it all when opposition become government. We've seen it all. It started in Zambia, it started in Benin Republic, the national conferences in Zaire, the Tshisekedi, the Chiluba Revolution, the Chiluba Revolution in Zambia.
Sorry, Charles, I can't hear you. Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead. You were saying now? Yes.
Yeah. So yes, what happened in Senegal is impressive. It continues the long tradition of elected rule and elected government in Senegal. More interesting with a young man and whose dramatic rise to power from prison, 4 days, 5 days to election, from prison to presidency. is interesting, but I'm also very cautious because the challenge in Africa is beyond new governments or opposition becoming governments, because we have seen it. We've seen it in Nigeria, the enthusiasm with which we all cheered the coming of the general about 10 years ago. You know, the enthusiasm with which we shared the coming of the opposition in Ghana. This have all been blown away, you know, by the realistic challenge on the ground. The structural gridlock in African politics cannot just be resolved by mere change of regime, except a regime that is willing to engage history, a regime that is willing to exert itself in the direction of engaging history and extracting new factions, new tools, new understanding. It is obvious that the traditional instrument, the traditional policy instrument that has been interchanged over time, whether opposition or government, in addressing African problem has become grossly deficient and insufficient. So with the new regime, we are really a new look beyond the new persons. With the new look, amount to reinterrogating history and understanding the structural factor that is responsible for the rigmarole, for the paralysis, for the deep hope for which Africa has sunk in recent times. Do we have the ideological? Do we have the, can we dig into the intellectual capital? Can we dig into the critical challenge of the nature and structure of state in Africa? The real legacy of colonialism, that significant factor that is responsible for the crisis and paralysis in Africa, and transform it beyond just new slogans. We wait to see. I'm also as excited as everybody about what we saw in Senegal. But I do not share the optimism that a new dawn has certainly happened, simply because we have a new face in Senegal, perhaps the face of a younger person. We've seen it all. We've seen it all in Liberia with the young George Weah.
Yeah.
He left a legacy of corruption. Good legacy of corruption.
But
every Liberia.
But I can't say that George Weah's, what shall I say, trajectory is different to Bayer's trajectory. But I hear you, Charles. What you're saying is we should be cautiously optimistic, right? Because in Africa, we've been excited several times and then something happens. Very last question I've got for you. I've got here, it says, good day, Cecile. My question for you, your guest, is is an intervention forced by the Arab League, or is an intervention forced by the Arab League not a step towards World War III? You've got 2 minutes.
The intervention. The African frontline states who mobilized.
The Arab League, right? She's what the question is.
What I'm trying to say is that anybody insisting that it could cause, I am trying to tell you it has happened before.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yes. The OAU mobilized in the case of Angola, to secure Angola, to secure Namibia, even South Africa. We were active. We trained ANC fighters. ANC fighters were fighting. They were fighting from Zambia. They were fighting from Tanzania. They were fighting from Zimbabwe. They were supplied generously by Nigerians. Nigeria was hosting ANC, providing them weapons, providing them support. We did not fight Second World War for it. Rather, apartheid crumbled. Rather, apartheid was halted. So anybody thinking that if the Arab League wears in militarily to intervene, to stop the carnage of their kith and kin with trigger Third World War is not as simple as that. There is absolutely no prospect. I hold it firmly that the future of Palestine, stopping Israel in this current carnage, can only be done by an international force led by the Arab League. The only significance of the current Security Council resolution is for the Arab to leverage it as an instrument to mount an international force to weigh in on Israel to stop the killing. Anything short of that will be at the convenience and discretion of Israel. Maybe when they are tired of too much death and too much blood, they can find any pretension to stop. But if we want to leave them to do that at their own time.
Thank you. Oh, we've literally just run out of time, Charles. Oh, I want to say thank you A big thank you. Your line is frozen again. Technical issues. Thank you so much to Charles Onunaiju. He is the Director, Center for China Studies. Charles Onunaiju, PhD, Director for China Studies in Abuja. He's a scholar, he's a visiting scholar at Shenzhen Normal University.
Will be reduced.
Right. Charles, we've just run out of time. So thank you for joining us. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. I have 2 guests with me. We're going to be talking Senegal.
It's Borderline.
99.3 Nigeria Info. We are more than just radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Nigeria Info FM. Check us out on Facebook at Nigeria Info 99.3. Follow us on Twitter at Nigeria Info FM and on Instagram at Nigeria Info FM Lagos for live updates as it happens. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.